the Shenanigans Motorsports number 11 Junior Late Model at Sunset Speedway, and you are watching ONTrack Weekly.
There we go. How's everybody doing? Long weekend. Racing all over the place in Ontario. Some really great stuff happening. What might be the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro maybe wasn't that entertaining, but the after party was. We'll definitely say that. Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., man, that's some fun stuff. We had a weekend of epic proportions, starting out at Delaware Speedway. Unfortunately, Ohsweken Speedway was rained out. What a buzzkill. The rain had to come in and ruin opening night for Ohsweken Speedway. And then actually at the same time, I believe there was fog that came in and ruined the racing out at, Merrittville, and they weren't able to get that full show in on Saturday either. But holy moly, guys, what a amazing weekend of racing. Sunset Speedway played host on Saturday and Sunday. Full Throttle Motor Speedway as well, Saturday, Sunday. Flamborough was out there on Saturday. Delaware on Friday, and the opener for Peterborough Speedway as well. We'll try and talk about all sorts of fun stuff. Let's talk mainly, though, about the amount of racing that was in the province this weekend. CTMP played host to a bunch of different open wheel series, the Sentra Cup, the NASCAR Canada Series, where Marc-Antoine Cameron cemented his name once again at the top of the standings at CTMP in a bid for this year's championship. It will be definitely somebody that you're going to have to watch out for. Andrew Ranger, still not able to get up there and compete for the championship. But then, of course, I was out at Sunset Speedway yesterday for the Bigsy Memorial Hot Rods, Sunset Hot Rods versus Oscar Hot Rods. I was able to take in what was by far, and I think I said this on the opening night, but some of the best racing I've ever seen live. Quite remarkable that they keep seeming to step it up each and every week, but that has been the reality so far of my experience, at least being at the racetrack. Specifically, of course, I've been at Sunset Speedway for the opener. And then, of course, this past weekend, we'll be there hopefully again Saturday for the Frank Davey Memorial, the Flying Frank 49 Invitational for the Super Stocks. Here's the hope, is that we can get a good contingent of Super Stocks out there. Now, it does become a little difficult because when it comes to invitationals, similarly to what we had this past weekend with the hot rods, you always have this expectation that you're going to get a much larger amount of racers than maybe you would typically get. I can't really say that the hot rods ended up being like that. Now, there's obviously some situations where cars just aren't ready. Maybe cars have been damaged. People just aren't available to race on a Sunday, with it also being the long weekend. But the hope would be that tracks work together to be able to make big events. But the problem is, it's also not wanting to, I guess, feed competition, feed your competition. So the biggest thing we're talking about first is you're not going to get any super stocks out of Peterborough because they're running super stocks that same night. So you're not going to get Marley Owen or Donovan Price or Clayton Reed, Brad Laval, Paul Bounty, Mark Gordon, Kyle Gordon, Sean Walker. The likelihood is that those drivers would stay because that's points night for them. So that kind of limits those guys. However, it does open the possibility of having some super stocks come up from Delaware Speedway. That would be the hope. I'd like to see some of the super stock guys out there, and they've got a pretty big super stock field. However, again, when you take a look at schedules, the 24th, the super stocks are on the card again. So they have the night before, but then they also have the week after. I was talking to Carson Nagy at Sunset. He was there with helping out Colton Everingham, and that's kind of the situation that he said. He's like, they've got like it's 5 nights of 5 weekends of 6 racing upcoming, and that's just it's so much. Do you take a car potentially to an invitational that you're not going to get points for, and potentially damage it to a point where you're not going to be able to compete for the championship anymore? And I know, talking to a couple of other drivers that did not take their hot rods to the event was for that same reason, is they don't want to go and potentially damage it, and then it puts them in a really bad position in the points. And perfect fact for the competition this past weekend was that it wasn't a points event for the hot rods in Oscar or at Sunset, and that may have deterred people because it isn't for something in the championship. So what's the risk? Is the risk worth the reward? Well, the big money was put up for both races. Ultimately, I think the races, they were dominated, both of them. It was 1 liter for the most part, but what I really liked was an invert. Having the fast cars have to start at the back and make their way to the front. And in the second race, Mark Dilly did just that. Worked his way through the back and got the win. And I'm sharing this personal story. I have been a racing fan since my dad took me to Mosport Speedway to see. I'd love to tell you which division it was. I have no idea. I think it was an enduro race of some sort, but it's hard to say. I really don't know. All I know is I remember number 55 won the race, and it was amazing. And that was the first at-track experience I ever got. So he took me to the CASCAR Super Series in 2003 at Mosport, and Mark Dilly was there. And that car, I don't know what it was about Mark Dilly, but it was he was driving the big, hefty 64 Dodge Intrepid. And it was on the front row. And it was just something about that car, and immediately I was enthralled. I mean, when I was taken to a CASCAR event, I never knew, first off, that it existed. And the one thing that I was really hoping for was to see him win. And I got to see it on TV in a couple of CASCAR and NASCAR Canadian Tire Series events. But The closest I got was him losing in a photo finish at Mosport to Kerry Mix. And it's nothing against Kerry Mix, but at that time, as a kid, I wasn't a Mix fan. I was a Dodge fan. I wanted the Dodge car to win. I didn't want Ford to win. So I went all that time from 2003 all the way to now, never being able to see a Mark Dilly win live. And we got to see it yesterday, and that was the topping on an amazing weekend that Sunset Speedway put together. Not only was it for that topping off with that great race, but there were some amazing finishes in heat races. But the feature race for the mini stocks, once again, side by side, battling for the win. Jacob Sutcliffe gets the win over Sean Taylor. And if you have been watching and know mini stock racing in Ontario, you know it is exceptionally hard to beat Sean Taylor. He comes in and he wins a lot. He comes out there for Frostfest. He comes out there for the Autumn Colors, Velocity. He is always somebody tough that you have to beat, that 76 car. And Jacob Sutcliffe has found the high side at Sunset Speedway. And for whatever, I don't know if it's going to stay this way, but the track these first couple of weekends has been absolutely amazing to watch, because the drivers just seem to have such good ability to be up high and on the bottom. It was the mini stock race that was a little chaotic. The middle of the field seemed to have a lot of problems getting themselves staying the right direction. There's some contact. There was a pretty big hit. Unfortunately, Andrea Lusk, wrong place. And she just unfortunately hit a car that went sideways. He had some mechanical failures. But one of the things that I really was impressed by was actually the bone stock division. And that's something that a lot of people, I think, sleep on. I've always said Delaware Speedway's bone stock division has been the best of the best. The last couple of years, it seems like it's been very dominated by one driver or two drivers each race or each weekend, and you kind of get the odd winners and guys that you typically will always see up front. And that's the same with every racetrack. But this year, there's a little bit of a different identity in the bone stock division. You got some veterans coming back in. You have a couple of new young faces coming in. But yesterday's bone stock event was easily one of the best bone stock races I've ever seen. It was clean side-by-side racing, at least at the front. The top four side-by-side, consecutive laps after lap after lap. Chris Allard running through on the bottom side on three tires. A lot of times he's drifting through the corner. Aiden Harper, who I'm not as familiar with, but Aiden Harper, holy moly, what a race he put on. And then it was Chris Allard. I don't know if he got loose or what, coming down to get the white, and he comes down into the turn 2, and he saved the hell out of his car, but it allowed Aiden Harper to get by. But Phil Givens and Chris Allard put on one heck of a show, and Jordan Owen was right there as well. He's a local favorite, and he's got such support there, and a great guy. And they the amazing part of that race is, and I kept thinking, it's the bone stocks, and that's where I think last year they had a lot of problems in this division, where there was a lot of guys that got into each other. There was obviously some dark sides of racing, where we got people doing stuff that we don't want in racing, and this was a highlight. And what I saw yesterday is, guys, you got Calvin Reeser back in this division, Chris Allard in this division, Phil Givens, that's an outlaw. He's going to run different schedule. He's not running one place, but they're teaching how to drive clean. That's what I saw yesterday. And that's what the young generation needs. We don't want racers to come into these divisions and just run over people. Because the higher you get up, you can't be doing that. Hell, you shouldn't be doing it at a young age either. But for a race fan to see that, it was fantastic. It's what I wanted to see at this track. Super stocks, I was pulling for Lane. He had the 46 on the side of the car instead of his normal 36 for Kenny Grube. And he had it, and Johnny Morrison ran him down, and Johnny Morrison passed him. Again, it looked like he passed him very clean, and got by for the win. And even, I guess, a division where, unfortunately, they get a lot of slack, which is the junior late models, they put on a hell of a race, and I really have to say, Cole Camrath was dominant week one. He destroyed the field. He was so fast. Keegan Moe really tried to keep up with him. Just couldn't seem to do it. But the guy, and I said it yesterday, Josh Davenport, when I saw him run last year, I thought that guy, the kid's got a lot of talent, and it looked like it yesterday as well. He ran down Cole Camrath. He got spun, and luckily, because they were on the lead lap, got put back into, I think it was still only third place, but got back into a battle, and it was not a given that Cole Camrath was going to win that race. It was a back and forth between two young drivers who really look like they're going to have a future in this business, and if they won. And Cole's got that legend car that he's going to be out running, so Josh Davenport would appear to be the name. Keegan Moe finishing on the podium, he's in his last year of these cars, so where he ends up, not sure, but it's going to be really exciting to see where he ends up, because he was the champion last year at Sunset. Wyatt Sprung comes in, and he finishes fourth. And then of course you're seeing the really young kids out there, and Curtis Struck and Ryland Camrath, and they had really, like, for young kids not having issues running over each other and not spinning. It was a pretty great competition. We've got Morgan Moore here, who was our intro driver tonight, and her 2024 ride pictured on the screen there. But there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna have to look out for, and this upcoming weekend at Peterborough will be the season opener for their junior late model program, which would look to be very, very big. It's one of those things that Smoking Joe Adams here in the chat says Sunset's paying big money for those races, and guys want to save their cars for points. Come on, Nagy, you can win more in that one race than all year for points at Delaware. It's decisions, right? Smoking Joe, they can do whatever they decide. Ultimately, the field was good enough. I mean, really, 16 super stocks. It was a fantastic field size for this pass for velocity, and I wouldn't say there was not a weak car in the bunch either. Any one of those guys could have won that race. Like I said, I was kind of bummed that it didn't that Lane wasn't able to hold on there, and I'm sure he was too. But at the end of the day, there's no family, I think, that loves a good race than the Zardo clan. And it was Debbie Jo's birthday. It was Grandpa Bill's birthday, and it's just awesome to see that that the family as a whole just gets so much love and well deserving. They had two of those races put together. I'm curious to see what the future holds for the family. Obviously, Billy's got his young son now, and but it's just an honor to see an event like that. They paid tribute to Bill at the end of the night with a chug of Coors Light, and I think, Rick Spencer Walt dominated that opening, and the great story there is Paul Sr. Paul would have been in that race, no questions asked. He would have been in. He would have done very well, but due to an injury working on his car, he put Rick Spencer Walt in that race. Stompin' Tom put Dwayne Baker in last year, and Dwayne won that, and now Mark Dilly wins, Rick Spencer Walt wins. I mean, these have been fantastic races. Hell, I would love to be able to see a continuation of this type of race, and that we're going to be able to see names come in and out like a Mark Dilly, but guys that raced with Bill. And the biggest compliment that you can have is to win a trophy that's more than just something that you win. It has meaning to it, and the fact that it's a former trophy of Bill's, that says everything. And that's one of the coolest things about that. I've been able to tour and see Bill's shop and see all the trophies that he has, and it's such a cool thing. And knowing what Spencer and what Brendan and what the team at Sunset have been doing and really pushing big promotions, big events, and doing really, really well planned out events, it means something. And I think the racers, the fans flock to it. I was worried, honestly, at the start of the race, when they were doing the heat races. It was quiet at Sunset, and it was also bloody hot. So people showed up, though, for feature time. And you know what? The crowd was great. It was fantastic. Velocity. I I love those nights. I love these types of events that have, it's like autumn colors, where you put a whole bunch of different divisions all on the same day. For me, I honestly think that there's things that they could look at. As a fan, obviously I'll take it all in. There are some things, like I think after a caution limitation would be interesting. And the only reason I suggest that is if it's a division like the mini stocks, where it's taken 4 or 5 cautions and we've only completed a couple of laps, that maybe you either start counting caution laps, or next caution ends the race, or something along those lines. I understand giving everybody the best value, but it's one of those things, just as something that I've noticed as well, that after a while, when you kind of, I guess I would say, like, it's like the Legend series, where they had really bad trouble at Sauble Speedway last year getting going. Coleridge, that's exactly it. Time races, maybe. So, like, 20 laps or 20 minutes, right? And if you exceed, then the next caution will end the race. Like, that's the way, kind of. And I understand that no one wants to finish under a caution. Like, that, no one does. But at the end of the day, you want to, like, as Sunset has done so very well, you want to move the show on. You want to get it going. The other thing would be to limit the amount of laps, but you won't. But I feel like the distances are perfect. I think they do it very well with the amount of laps that they have. And more compliments, again, on fan and interaction. The Rubber Duck promotion, hands down, I think is fantastic. I love it. The Domino's award that they give each week. It doesn't have to be a ton of money each and every week. I understand payouts are what they are. Some tracks, it's a lot more. Some tracks, it's not. But even something as simple as free pizza for your team, that does something. It's helpful in another sense, right? Like, it's like we talked about before in trying to look up and think of possible awards for racing series, and donation of gas cards for the drivers, that because you guys got to race, you got to drive, and gas is not cheap. So even though it's not cold hard cash, it's something that is redeemable and usable. And let's face it, the racers need as much assistance as they can get. You want to support, you want to help as best you can. Say after 15 minutes, count caution laps. I think so too, Reg. Honestly, I mean, I'm not one of those guys. I don't want racing to stop. Like, I could watch it all night long. However, there's also families with a lot of young kids, and I feel like there's a limitation on how long anybody's attention span is. Listen, racing has a lot of trouble because it's got to go up against phones, it's got to go up against streaming, it's got to go up against staying at home, which a lot of people do. So it is something that you have to try and keep people's attention. Now, again, what I think all tracks need to invest in is track tune, because for myself, if I can't make it to the racetrack, I want to listen. If there's no live stream, which I'm okay with, I want to listen to what's happening at the track. If it's a track that people can't really make it out to, but they want to hear the action, I think that's a great idea. I know everybody's kind of looking for the ability to build and to be bigger and better and stronger. It's definitely true, but we have to be aware that it's a fighting an ever losing battle sometimes, because take it back to last week with the rain that happened, and the comments that, as a racing fan, I understand, but as somebody that wants to see racing live, it frustrates me to no end, is seeing people complaining and blasting the track for not getting rain checks, not getting this, not clarifying if they're going to race or not. It's frustrating, because there are people who put so much effort and time into motorsports. So many people that put so much money into it. And there's a common misconception, and I've heard this from tracks, from people posting and seeing and talking about it. The tracks are just in it to make money. You don't make money in racing, let's be honest here. It's a hard thing to do, to run a racetrack, and we are in really tough times here when it comes to keeping tracks open. We really don't have a lot of options left here. We've already said goodbye to Barrie. We've said goodbye to Kawartha. We've said goodbye to Mosport Speedway. We're now having to say goodbye to Humberstone. We don't want one of these other tracks to be next. And by blasting tracks on social media, by posting comments on social media, the one thing I remember about starting in certain jobs was, they say, got to watch what you do on social media, because people, like the bosses, they check. And it's a very common theme that if somebody wants to get involved in motorsports, if it's a business and they do some research and they find a driver on social media and they're posting all this negativity content, stuff that's not acceptable socially, whether you agree with it or not, they might turn away. And we don't want to be turning anybody away. So it's about making sure that, yeah, not everything is always going to be, nice and perfect and everything's all happy and everybody gets along. That's just not true. But there's also a limit, right? And I've noticed that some of the drivers that did post this weekend, when they talk about their incidents, very politically correct. Not calling out somebody by name. Not saying, I'm going to wreck this da 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 da. Why? Because you've got partners, and if all of a sudden you start going off and something, say, gets thrown around, terminology gets used, stuff that goes out and maybe isn't meant the way that it's perceived, it's dangerous, right? We don't want people to all of a sudden think negative more than they already do about racing and more than they already do about racetracks. It's one of my biggest fears is that we're going to have no tracks in like 10 years. One of the things that we really need is to go out and make sure that on those off weeks, people are going to support other racetracks. And that, yeah, sure, it is very tough because you're asking people to travel more, spend more money. But perfect example, there were super stocks on the card for Flamborough Speedway, but they didn't have any show up. I don't know the reasoning behind all of that. I'm a little, I guess I'm sad that we're at that point. And we want Varney, we want Flamborough, Peterborough, Grand Bend, Sauble, Delaware. We want all these tracks to be around. We want Merrittville. We want Brighton, Brockville, Ohsweken. Now, Ohsweken's not really in a position right now where they're not doing well, but you want to make sure that we just had a track that was saved. I mean, Southern Ontario, South Buxton was closed and it's been saved. We've got one sitting there now. Jacasa's situation, I think a lot of people think that they know the situation, and there's only people that know what the actual situation is, and that's for them to hold on to. Other people like to talk about what they think the situation is there. It's never been said that it's torn down. It's just closed. Doesn't mean that at some point something could happen where it does eventually get torn down or it eventually reopens. But we want to make sure that people are able to support racetracks, and because those tracks need whatever we can give them. I applaud Flamborough Speedway for this past weekend because they didn't have super stocks. So what they did is they threw in an additional race for a dash for cash, which was a great idea because it took the drivers that finished at I think it was like the back 10 of the pure stocks and gave them an opportunity to race for some money. 10 laps for money. Hell yeah, why not? You've got the CVMs out there, the Ontario Pro Challenge out there. One of the things that I think we were hoping, I'm hoping, is that I'll get out to Flamborough Speedway this year. It is easily one of my favorite tracks. OSS is going back there this year, so that's the hope, is that it'll be out there for that event. OSS is one that another one where the series was looking very bleak. A couple of years ago, I had actually posted about this. So we had, I think it was either 5 to 6 cars in 2021 on our opening night, and at Delaware on Friday we had 19 show up. Unfortunately, because of a practice crash, only 18 were able to start. But to go from 5 to 18 in 3 years, that's a positive sign. That's what we want to see. The NASCAR Canada Series had an opening weekend with 30 cars 31 were initially there. I don't believe the 31st was able to start the race. I think just that maybe they didn't end up having the car ready or something happened. But 30 cars, solid field to start the season. You had 16 super stocks at Sunset for velocity. You had 19 bone stocks, 21 mini stocks, 12 that showed up. I believe you had 11 race junior late models, 15 hot rods. You had 20 APC cars show up in what was probably, we're not allowed to qualify as didn't meet minimum time threshold, unfortunately, due to issues. That sucks, Brandon. However, the APC event was fire. Easily. You know what? I actually think that may have been the best APC race I have ever seen. Easily. Because the drivers at the front didn't wreck anybody. Yeah, sure, they bumped and they moved and they tried to shove, but they didn't wreck. And for years, Dale Shaw won the initial championship in the APC series. Your initial champion. And I'd say since that time, Dale's, he's had a rough go of it. But to get the top 3 when their 4th car wasn't able to start the race because of an engine issue, which is a gut punch to start the weekend, to then get the top 3 positions, the 72 of Junior Farley getting his first APC win, but holding off and passing Kyle Steckley to do it, and then having to hold off Blair Wickett, his teammate, to do it, and team boss Dale Shaw. Easily one of my most favorite races I've seen, probably the best APC race I've ever seen. It's amazing when people race each other clean, what good racing can be put on. The Steve Slaughter Classic was the same way. It was clean. I think he had 1 caution. Clean racing has been the name of the game for the most part. It got a little hairy with the mini stocks a couple weeks ago, but clean racing has been phenomenal. Delaware Speedway, V8 stocks this week. You had Barry Watson get out there, get a win. Field of 10. Smaller field, for sure. But again, once another competitive event, the V8s, the bone stocks, again, had a bajillion cars show up. I was really worried about Jeremiah Rabideau, whether he was going to be able to continue the success that he's had as the champion last year in the lift-tow bone stock division out of Delaware Speedway. All those question marks erased after race number 1. Race 2. He went out there, he got that win. It wasn't a gimme, he had to earn it. But he went out there and he got it. And in the OSS, you know what? I was concerned because our Delaware races really have not been very good. We've normally had one guy that gets out front and just streaks away and no one can catch him. They lap up to 3rd, 4th, 5th place. And that didn't happen. We had a bunch of cautions, unfortunately. We had some moves that didn't sit right. However, the best part was a guy like Sean McGlynn coming back to our series. And if you don't know, Sean McGlynn is pursuing Steve Robley for the most victories in series history. He's already got the most championships in series history. So now he's looking for, I think he's got three. He's got 3 to tie, 4 to win, 4 to take over as the most. Now, he's got to be careful because his brother Chad also is only 2 wins behind him. So the McGlyns are on their way to being ultimately the best of the best. Add in newcomer from last year, Corey McAllister, who goes out, wins half the races, along with Rick Spencer-Walt helping win at Sauble. And all of a sudden now, the champion from 21, the 4-time champion Sean McGlynn, 5 if you include previous into the cast car regime, and then 23 champion Corey McAllister. All of a sudden, you got those 3 racing for the lead, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, until the end when Sean fades, Chad fades, and Corey McAllister comes out on top again. But the racing itself was, again, some of the best racing that we've seen in the OSS series in a long time. It's really nice to see that. And I see Carson's in the conversation here. And I bring it back to what we saw last year. Learn from what we've seen. Nagy with Lane Zardo and Sean Chenoweth put on some of the best clean racing. Yeah, they had one minor incident between Lane and Carson, but the whole season was clean racing and tight back and forth passes, battling for wins all season long. It's almost like it's a rarity, but it's really great to see other racers that are adapting the clean racing, dumping people for wins. It's not the same. I understand people do it. I understand that you see it all in the highest levels of motorsports. But we have to remember, we don't have cars everywhere. We don't have tons and tons of money in motorsports. The fact of the matter is, the racing this weekend was phenomenal, top to bottom. Absolutely phenomenal. Peterborough Speedway put on, and I'm going to mention Brandon Feeney for this because he sent me a clip of him entering the parking lot. Now, when you enter Peterborough Speedway, there is an initial parking lot, and then there's a larger parking lot basically on the side where the fan entrance is. You got the pit entrance side, and then you have the fan entrance side. When you go in for autumn colors, typically that's all filled in because of campers. Well, this wasn't autumn colors. This was opening night, and it was filled to the very end. I could not believe how many cars were there. Now, Peterborough Speedway has fan appreciation to start their season, which means free admission. Well, we had JP Josiassi on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, and we asked about, the struggles of being a track owner and trying to get people to come to the races. Well, he talked about, okay, well, if I give people free admission, what are they going to do? They're going to want to buy concessions, and I can make my money on concessions because now I've got all this extra fan base coming in because it's free. Sure, I'm going to take a bit of a hit on the admission, but then all the sales and potential sales in commissions could potentially offset it. And what happened? They ran out of food. That's a good sign. it's what you want to see. You want to see people going to the racetrack. CTMP was packed. Sunset was packed. I think we need to help as racing community. We do. We need to help places when they're struggling. The racing community as a whole is a family. No one wants to see a racetrack go away. So the days that we have guys in series tracks that don't get the cars, we need to try and help. If we can. We got to get it. You got to get guys to go to the racetrack. You have to get... Listen, there's no doubt about it here. The pure stock division at Flamborough is phenomenal. One of the best in the province. I mean, Courtney Scott, Wade Thorne, Gary Slamma, the Mitchells, Brady Cox. I mean, he won't like that I mentioned his name because he hasn't had the greatest start to his season. Cam Thompson. You see Phil Givens out there quite a bit. Reese Bourgeois out there. Spencer Riddell, a name that I definitely think you're going to see a lot of. He's great. Really, really good. But that division is phenomenal. But they didn't get any cars for their super stocks. Their mini stocks didn't get the greatest count. But they've got potential there. You got Caitlin Wallace there. Mike Gilmore. Mike Thompson. Nikki King. Tyler Lewis, RJ Croteau, Michael Kenny, Matthew Smith. It's a small mini stock. It's not 20, 25. But if we can help with those counts, this is the same with Peterborough. They've got some divisions that maybe have a little bit less. Doesn't mean that they're not any good. Sometimes, as we talked about, and it was a good conversation that we've had so many good conversations with people at Sunset, and they talked about it. It was tough at Sunset a couple of years ago, where I was there. We were there for OSS and in 21, and they struggled with their bone stocks. I believe it was like 6 cars, and it was tough. And slowly but surely, people are coming out. They're getting cars. It's not a cheap thing. But when you put a product on like this, when you get people taking pictures, taking video, people that want to stream, Strongco 77, Pedal Power, CalPro Motorsports, Motorsport Alley recorded the races this past week, and Strongco recorded. Pedal Power did as well. There is so much that we can do with this content. You know, I have no problem being somebody that, hey, if you've recorded the race and you want somebody to add commentary, I will gladly do commentary. Not a problem. Because one of the things that I love about races is commentary. I could listen to Brendan Doherty announce people driving shopping carts in a parking lot and be entertained. I've never heard somebody talk so quickly to be able to announce people's names. Coleridge says, it's hard to support all tracks, though, if there's a big event or just events on the same night. That's the hardest part about it, Coleridge. It's almost as if tracks, I don't know if they're going to like this, but they need to work together. You can't have a big invitational that is teased as a big invitational if other tracks are running the same division the same night. Points. If there's a way to get more and more cars out, absolutely. But not everybody is a Chris Lawrence. Not everybody can put 10 to 15 bone stocks out across Ontario. I think that there's guys that would definitely get behind it. I think that there's a lot of potential to grow and be a bigger racing community because people don't know about the racing community. As terrible as it is to say that, they just don't. We have so much potential here. That APC series, phenomenal. You have stories across Ontario racetracks that I don't think people are aware about. They're not aware of. Because GM of Sauble Speedway, Brad Holmes, brings and reminds me of a great story that took place this weekend. There is some things in racing that are hard to match. And something that I don't think gets enough attention is Full Throttle Motor Speedway's Thunder Truck Division. Outwardly dominated by Jason Vale for 2 years. Now, I'm only hearing this information secondhand. If the statistics are entirely correct of what people have told me, he has been undefeated in 2 years in the Thunder Truck Division. And not one defeat in that time. Until the crown was taken, the king was dethroned by Tanner Holmes. And in fact, also by Mason Culver. But Tanner Holmes dethroned the king. 2 years undefeated. And even the start of the season, the first race, he won again this year. But that number 5 truck, Tanner Holmes, comes out, gets the win. Mason Culver comes back the next day and does it again. Recognition to someone who deserves it is Jason Vale. It doesn't matter. It's like those years that when they talked about Jessica James and how dominant she was in the Outlaw Midgets, and it was just not mentioned. It's just not a ton of people knew. And then we get to learn about these divisions and these tracks and hear these stories, and you get to learn, and it's through supporting these channels like Pedal Power, Strong Co, G-Force, that you learn. McPherson Motorsports is another one that's recording races. It's why we have ONTrack Weekly now, is to talk about these stories. I haven't shared any graphic today. I have been talking straight since we started this show because there's so much excitement. I am so excited about what I've seen. As a racing fan, it is so nice to see. Now, Brad can help me. I don't believe that was Tanner's first win. But 10 out of 10, guys. Jason took it on the chin all night from us, but is happy to see the competition level upped again. Every racer is a competitor. Even though they don't say that winning gets boring, I think it was. Because he's not being challenged. And look at that. It was Tanner Holmes' first win. And he dethroned the king to do it. He wasn't alone. Aiden Harper got his first win, and he had to dethrone or hold off like the king of bone stocks, Phil Givens, and Chris Allard to do it. Jake Sutcliffe got his second straight Velocity Crown, second win, second feature win. It's the new fresh faces coming into racing. Promote these names. Know them. And listen, we're just getting started because we've still got Sauble Speedway to open up. We've still got Grand Bend to open up. There is still more racing coming. Get behind the big three at Sunset Speedway. Get behind the Junior Late Model program, the Bandoleros at Peterborough. Get behind the Junior Late Models at Full Throttle at Sauble. Get behind the Junior Sprints at Grand Bend. Future needs to be bright in motorsports. We can do that, and we can do it by being a united force here. We want racing to live on. We want it to grow. We're working with great organizations, great people like the Ladies of the Oval to promote women in racing, get more women in racing. We want more and more people to start talking about it, showcasing it, give the partners what they deserve, give the racers what they deserve, give the crew members and the tracks the love they deserve. Is what we are here for on ONTrack Weekly each and every week, Mondays at 7. I've been your host, Cam K. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in this week. Make sure you go to a racetrack this week in the Flying Frank 49 this weekend. But also, make sure you tune in to catch racing. Even if you aren't able to make it out, track tune for Flamborough Speedway. Sunset Speedway is available. Make sure you check out the schedules. Support, support, support. That is what we ask you. If you can give us a thumbs up on this show, we really appreciate it. We want to thank you each and every week. If you're a fan of the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, if you're a fan of G-Force TV, if you are a fan of motorsports, thank you. Have a great week. Let's look forward to more racing this weekend here in Ontario. I'm Cam K. Have yourself a great week.